Carl Jung once said that the greatest danger of spiritual awakening is not failure, but success. Why? Because success at piercing through illusions doesn't set you free. It often leaves you in emptiness. He called this the awakening paradox, the strange moment when enlightenment itself becomes a psychological crisis, when ego death doesn't liberate you, but strips away everything that once gave you drive. And that's why we're here today, to explore why spiritual awakening killed your motivation. If you've ever woken up spiritually only to feel like life lost its meaning, this video will help you see that what you're experiencing isn't the end of your path. It's the beginning of your deepest transformation. Before we continue, I want you to do 3 things. Like this video, subscribe, and share your experience in the comments. Has awakening ever left you feeling empty, confused, or unmotivated? Your story might be the exact one that helps someone else who feels completely alone in their post-awakening emptiness. When Carl Jung studied patients who had undergone breakthroughs in consciousness, he saw a disturbing pattern. At first, people were euphoric, full of clarity, passion, and spiritual insight. But within months, motivation collapsed. Careers ended, relationships dissolved. Goals seemed absurd. Take the example of a businessman Jung worked with. He had built his empire on relentless ambition, fueled by competition and fear of failure. But after a sudden spiritual awakening, he saw through his own game. Every contract, every deal, every late night, it was all just ego, he confessed. And with that realization, his drive evaporated. For Jung, this wasn't a rare case. It was a consistent pattern. He realized that the emptiness after awakening is not a mistake. It's an essential stage of the individuation process, the psychological journey of shedding false selves to uncover the authentic self. In alchemy, the first stage of transformation is the Nigredo, or blackening. Jung saw this as a perfect metaphor for spiritual awakening. After the light of ego death comes the darkness of dissolution. Think of it like a caterpillar inside its cocoon. At first it dissolves into formless goo. It is neither caterpillar nor butterfly. It is pure emptiness. That's what happens after awakening. The old identity dissolves, but the new one hasn't yet formed. In modern terms, imagine someone leaving a corporate job after realizing their entire career was built on fear and social pressure. At first, it feels liberating, but then comes the collapse. Bills pile up, identity disappears, and they feel lost. This is the Nigredo, a psychological death before rebirth. This is why spiritual awakening killed your motivation, because the old source of energy had to die before the new one could appear. One of Jung's most famous patients was Maria. She practiced meditation for years until she had a sudden, overwhelming experience of ego death. For weeks afterward, she felt euphoric, floating in bliss. But soon, the bliss gave way to indifference. She stopped eating, stopped working, and abandoned her relationships. "I've seen the truth," she told Jung. "Nothing matters anymore. Love is attachment. Work is distraction. Success is an illusion." To most doctors, this would look like depression, but Jung knew better. Maria wasn't broken. She was in the chrysalis phase of individuation, where the authentic self hasn't yet been born. Modern example: think of people who leave toxic religions or cults. At first, they're exhilarated, but soon they collapse into confusion. They've lost the old framework, but don't yet have a new one. That's the same crisis Maria faced, a spiritual emptiness that is actually sacred. Carl Jung explained that all motivation is either persona-driven, that fueled by fear, ego, and social conditioning, or self-driven, that flowing from the authentic self and soul motivation. When awakening happens, persona-driven motivation collapses. The job you chased to impress others, the relationship you pursued to avoid loneliness, the goals rooted in fear of failure, all of it dies. But here's the paradox. When those illusions fall away, nothing replaces them immediately. That's why you feel empty. That's why spiritual awakening killed your motivation. Jung coined a chilling phrase, purpose poisoning. It's when goals masquerade as meaningful, but are actually ego traps. One of his patients, Thomas, spent 15 years building a successful business. After awakening, he realized it was all built on fear of failure and the need for validation. My entire company, he told Jung, is a house of cards built on quicksand. Modern example, a lawyer works tirelessly for prestige and financial security, but after awakening, she realizes her career was driven by fear of being unworthy. Suddenly, the work feels meaningless. This is the poison of false purpose. Awakening doesn't kill real purpose. It kills the counterfeit version. Jung's answer to this crisis was the individuation process, a journey with 3 stages. 1. Dissolution. Ego-driven ambitions collapse. 2. Coagulation. Subtle, authentic impulses begin to emerge. 3. Integration. Those impulses crystallize into a sustainable life path. Think of it like rebuilding a house. First, you must demolish the old structure. Then you clear the ground. Only then can you construct something aligned with your soul. This process explains why spiritual awakening killed your motivation, because your old house was built on shaky ground. Between the death of ego motivation and the birth of soul motivation lies the hardest part, the gap. This gap can last months or even years. During this time, nothing feels right. You can't go back to illusions, but you can't yet move forward. Many panic here. Some relapse into old ambitions. Others stay paralyzed in spiritual emptiness. Modern example, people who quit corporate jobs to follow their bliss but end up stuck, confused, and broke. They assume they failed. In reality, they're just in the gap. This gap is why post-awakening life feels so unbearable. But Jung taught that the gap is necessary. It's the soil where authentic purpose will grow. So how does new motivation arise? Slowly, quietly, through whispers, not shouts. Patients told Jung that after months of emptiness, small impulses appeared. One wanted to paint, not for fame, but because it felt like breathing. Another wanted to teach children, not for status, but because it lit something inside. Modern example, people leaving burnout careers often discover small, authentic passions, gardening, writing, helping others, that feel effortless. These impulses are fragile at first, but they are the beginnings of soul motivation. This is where authentic purpose is born. Jung called the next phase living symbolically. Instead of forcing life through goals, you begin to live through meaning, synchronicity, and alignment. One patient, Elena, rediscovered painting after awakening. At first, it was just personal therapy, but soon her art began healing others. She didn't plan this as a career. It simply emerged because she followed her authentic impulses. Modern example. Think of people who leave traditional careers to follow synchronicity, starting nonprofits, writing books, or creating art. Not out of ambition, but because life itself called them. Living symbolically is how the authentic self guides us. What feels like death is actually a psychological resurrection. Jung discovered that those who survived the emptiness emerged with authentic motivation so strong it could not be shaken by external failures. Unlike ego-driven ambition, this drive flows from the core of being. Modern example, a man leaves finance after awakening. For years he struggles in emptiness. Then, slowly, He begins working in conservation. At first, it pays little, but he feels alive again. His purpose is no longer tied to success. It's tied to authenticity. This is the resurrection, the rebirth of the authentic self. At the end of his life, Carl Jung said, "The greatest secret of individuation is this: purpose is not something you choose. It's something that chooses you." He called it the life that wants to live through you. This is the ultimate resolution to why spiritual awakening killed your motivation. Awakening killed your illusions, not your destiny. It stripped away false desires, so the soul motivation buried beneath could rise. So if you feel empty, lost, or unmotivated, trust the process. Comment below, "I trust the process." Let's build a community that understands that spiritual emptiness is not death. It's pregnancy. Something sacred is gestating within you. And if you want to dive deeper into Jung's warnings about the traps of unconscious living, check out my next video. Until then, remember, awakening didn't kill your motivation. It killed your limitations. Thank you for watching.